I started coming to China at the turn of the millennium. And when I came into Capital Airport. The first time I came, I went on the old airport road. So it was not an auspicious beginning. It was not this modern city that you see today. And quite frankly, everything was pretty much new at that time. China was really basically 40 years into its new period, 30 years in terms of doing things very differently than it had been done before. And this was before WTO, China's entrance into it. So things were very different. And it was the changes since then. I mean, apart from bicycles on the streets instead of cars today, the subway system. I mean, that's the physical infrastructure, and it's really important. But what struck me in terms of the real changes of what's happened to the people. After being in Beijing for a short while, I then went to Qinghai, and I saw people in real poverty. But what was interesting, it's a matter of perspective, because when I talked to people, it was very, very interesting. I saw this gentleman, and I said, it's interesting your house is next to the freeway. He said, isn't it great? I asked him, I said, so how are things going? But he was just all smiles, and he said, my kids go to school. I said, it wasn't possible before this road. And all of a sudden I realized that economic development is in the eye of the beholder. It's where you're starting from, and whether or not you have hope. So this is the kind of thing that really impressed me. I remember being on the subways, and I wasn't that old then. They would come up and they would say, listen, you're a foreigner, please take my seat. Or they would just gesture because they didn't speak English. I said, why are these people doing that? I asked my interpreter why, and they said, listen, you're a foreigner. We realize in China we're behind, but we want to catch up, we want to learn. And anybody who can teach us is welcome here in China. I was really interested in the way that China is able to create cities, because I saw some new cities that they had created, and I was amazed, because in Europe and America we manage cities. In China they were actually creating cities, like Shenzhen. It was a fishing village, a few thousand people, not even a few hundred people, my understanding. And now it is a major metropolis, 15 million people. Everyone from Shenzhen is basically from somewhere else. So at this juncture, China has the ability, a strong government led in terms of policy and what the goals are, but also a very vital market. The difficulty is the pandemic. The pandemic emaciated China's small, medium-sized enterprises. So that is the real struggle that China has right now, and you can see that in the policies that have been developed. They're cutting taxes and fees to make sure that these companies have money to continue. They cut rents where they could. They couldn't demand it of private landlords, but the public landlords, they actually did cut the rent in some cases. China has more tools in its toolbox perhaps than any other country in the world. They can do things directly, they can cut taxes, but it's not just the policy, it's the speed. The Premier, Li Keqiang, had a meeting. He called 100,000 government employees together online and said, we need a plan. Here are the goals of the plan. This is what we want to do. I need you to get me a plan in the next couple of weeks. And they did. From the top, you get the policy, you get the direction. But most of the decisions at the local level are being made based on local conditions. Very, very important, because China is a vast area. You cannot have one size fits all here. If you talk on a broader level, will China go back to 10 plus percentage points in GDP growth? No, not likely, because China's economy has grown so much. There's something that statisticians call the regression to the mean. But what it really means that you can have very fast growth, but at a certain point you grow so big that to grow more, is very difficult. I mean, China adds enough GDP to its economy currently every year so that it equals the entire economy of Australia. You know, if you're adding the GDP for the entire country of another country like Australia, which, you know, does pretty well, that is an indication that you're expanding. So this idea that society as a whole has to advance, not just a few within it. And this is also very attractive to me, this idea of innate fairness, that societies should be judged by how they treat the least powerful of their people, not the ones who are privileged. So that has been something that China has been able to maintain. You see that with the eradication of poverty.